International Women's Day is coming up, and we're looking at companies that change the social climate and Canadian economy for women, including Femtech Canada. It is the country's first national network dedicated to advancing women's health. Here to discuss the company's groundbreaking work is Rachel Bartholomew, the CEO and founder of Femtech Canada. Rachel, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit to start what Femtech is and why do you feel it is so needed right now?
Yeah, so Femtech is the innovation and technology surrounding women's health care components. And so that can be anywhere from consumable goods all the way to genomic sequencing and everything in between. And why it's so needed today is women have largely been out of the conversation when it comes to healthcare. Here in Canada, it was only 1996 that women were actually involved and supposed to be involved in clinical trials. And so that means that we have 30 plus years of fundamental research into products that just has never existed before.
And when you think about, Rachel, just the opportunities and the gaps that exist in the Canadian healthcare system, what are some acute ones in your mind that really stick out?
Yeah, so we, in women's health in general, a lot of the focus has been on what we call bikini medicine. And so breast health, gynecological health, menstrual health, fertility, these are all the things that have largely gotten focus. But as we have developed through research, what we found is women experience heart attacks differently. Women experience autoimmune situations differently. And so there's a number of different conditions that really disproportionately and differently affect women. And so heart health, autoimmune health, we're looking at things like cancers that affect differently. So there's a number of different opportunities for innovations to come into these areas.
And now you started this, you launched in 2024, and it's now the third largest in the world. Have you grown that well, or is it that there's a space that needs to be filled here and people are finding you?
Yeah, there's a space to be filled for sure. So when we started, there was about 51 women's health companies across Canada, and now we're over 200 companies across Canada and counting. And that is simply just because as the awareness starts to grow around Femtech and that the community exists for these businesses and these innovations to have camaraderie and to share their qualms and quarrels, it's really helped build that industry into now what the government's calling one of the largest and fastest growing sectors in Canada.
Rachel, do you see part of what Femtech offers is the ability for financing, venture capital, and building those types of networks? Or is it a Y Combinator for women's health-focused enterprises?
Not quite a Y Combinator. We are very much focused on a larger kind of federal initiative here. So it's all about as much advocacy, as much as it is about educating investors on the potential for women's health. I'll give you some stats. So about 12% of our companies have raised funding, and only about 4% of them have raised institutional funding. And yet our companies in the Femtech Canada ecosystem have contributed to about 1,200 plus jobs on the Canadian market. And so even though venture capital has been slow to adopt, partially because of the lack of attention that has been given, partially due to the need to have a term, aka Femtech, to put on these companies, what we've seen is these companies being able to be scrappy, be able to create jobs, create IP, create all the things that the government wants to see in order to create this ecosystem, and venture capital slowly starting to come on board now that we're having exits in companies like, Maven and Flow being a big unicorn status company. And so we're starting to get there, but there's still a little bit more time that's needed in order for us to get more venture capital interest.
I was going to ask you, how are the returns on these? Are people seeing a good return on their investment in them?
100%, 100%. But like I said, we need that time in order to be able to get companies to the level. We just haven't had enough time with the brand Femtech in order to see those exits and to see those unicorn status companies growing. But there was just an exit report that was released this year at JPM, so JP Morgan's healthcare conference. And so the data is slowly starting to be developed, which is another big pillar of trying to track these things appropriately.
And what's government think of this? Where's the government right now?
It's an interesting question. And so I was actually just in Ottawa this past week. We are trying to push a bill through called S243, and it's essentially a framework for women's health. Canada has not updated its women's health strategy since 1999 here in Canada. And it's something that got shelved and it never got attention after that. And so we're very behind. I think we're the 5th lowest developed country in the world without a women's health strategy. And so we've been pushing them. We've been lobbying and advocating on behalf of women for about 2.5 years. We're starting to see the recognition, but we're hoping that that turns into deployment for things like primary care, for research, for innovation, and for an investment fund that we can put towards women's health.
Okay, we have to wrap it up there, but Rachel, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel Bartholomew is the CEO and founder of Femtech Canada.